Welcome to the Haven Media Cut, a look into marketing, brand, and the stories behind it that make the companies who they are today great. This is the Haven Media Cut. Hey everybody, I'm Adam Grubb with Haven. I'm alongside Eric Anderson, also with Haven. And on this session, we're going to be talking strictly about brand inside your marketing. Now more than ever, marketing and your brand and the strength of that is so important. But it's always important no matter what is happening in the world. It just seems to be that right now, a lot of people are talking about it. What do they say? What do they do? How do they handle these certain situations? So for us now over this session, we just want to talk about the brand as a whole. How do you start in either a rebrand for your company? How do you look at your own brand internally and say, hey, maybe it's time for a change? And Eric and I have worked through many rebrands of companies, from website to logo to even their color palette. And there's so many things that come into that. Eric, for you as a brand designer, when you look at a company, do you first see that brand and can you feel the brand? Or are there times where you think that they've completely missed the mark and you don't really feel anything other than a company?
Yeah, I think a big part of it is really getting to know the person on the other end of the logo, so to speak. So a big part of what we do is sit down, kind of get to know the client and understand who they are. And so many businesses are reflective of who's leading the company. And so getting inside their mind, finding out what they like, things that make them passionate, those things all start to come out, and we start to uncover some of the nuances that make up who they are and who their company is.
And that's something that is probably overlooked by most people. When they're going through their brand, they're not thinking about them. They're thinking about their customer, they're thinking about their product, or they're thinking about their service. They're not thinking about what they enjoy, what they like, what they wear, what they drive, other brands that they're involved in or that they like. That's really the key step in any first process of a rebrand or of a brand design, is to decide, what do I like? What resonates with me? And you start to then pile on certain color palettes, certain guidelines that say, hey, these are the things that represent you as a person and as a business owner, as a company. This is where your brand should look. Is that about right?
Yeah, I think that's probably half of it. And the other half is then, there's an empathy that goes along with that. You're trying to understand who they are, but then to go a little bit further, you're working to understand who their client is, their ideal client. And you're getting inside of their head as well to find, okay, so we know who you are, we know what you like, but now what is your ideal customer like? What are they looking for? Where do those things overlap?
So, Eric, let me ask you this. There's many brands that are iconic, right? Is there a formula to become an iconic brand, whether it's local or whether it's national or even global, where there's something resonates with people on a emotional and visceral level? Is there a secret formula for that? Or is that done over time? Is that done over repetition? Or is that done because of their product?
Right. It's definitely not a magic formula. There's no magic bullet for it, unfortunately. But, if you look at iconic brands like Nike or Coca-Cola, and it's like, oh, the Nike swoosh or the Coca-Cola logo, that red and white. We think of that as iconic. We see that and immediately recognize it. But if that came out today, it would fall far by the wayside. Like it wouldn't stand out to you at all. But it's everything that they've done over the years to consistently communicate the same message over and over and over again in every aspect of what they do, whether it's a website or whether it's a t-shirt or whether it's a tennis shoe or whether it's a commercial. Everything speaks the same language. There's clarity that's found throughout the entire brand. It's more than just a logo. It's more than just a name. It's all encompassing.
Do you have a sense of some of those brands that are even understand how iconic that they are and yet have not really changed the way that they do business? So you think of a Patagonia, or you think of a North Face, or you think of a Yeti. These are not global brands that are recognized for their brand and not necessarily their product, right? Is there something there where you try your best to get a brand to understand that they're not about their product, but they're about the way that their company and their product makes somebody feel?
Sure, like in an irrational sense, like
right.
someone someone comes along and it's like, oh, Yeti coolers, I've got to have one.
Right.
But it's just a cooler.
Right. Why? Why do they need that? Because it makes them feel something. And a lot of small companies and even big companies, they miss that step. They miss that emotional connection, that emotional attachment. And in a brand design, that's very, very important. That's the top part of any brand design is how do you want your company or your product or your brand to make people feel? And that starts with, what do you like? That seems so counterintuitive to most people. And even myself going through that process, why is it that it's important to understand how your product or service or company makes someone feel to have an authentic brand designed for you?
Yeah, there's a nuance to it as well. Like, I always like to think about that end client, right? Is this a super expensive, ultra premium product, or is this something that's more value driven? It's not expensive, and then how does the logo or how does the brand identify that? Like, if you're selling McDonald's cheeseburger, you're not going to make the logo look like this elite steakhouse that everything's going to cost, it's $50 an entree and
right.
French fries are another $30. It's finding a look and a feel and a story that is perfectly in tune with the person that's going to be on the receiving end of that.
Now, you just said a word that is used so often anymore in marketing, and that's story. What is the product story? What is the company story? What is the customer story, the customer journey? All of these words are thrown around when you're doing a brand and a marketing redesign, but they matter. They aren't just words. Story matters. The story of the product, the story of the company, the story of the brand. Those are the types of things that truly drive people. So run me through a process, let's say, for a new company or even a company that's been around for a long time that's just looking to re-energize themselves or reinvent themselves, maybe through this COVID period or down the road. What's one of the first things they should do to understand truly where their brand should go?
Sure. I think just taking a step back and really assessing your company through the eyes of your ideal customer is a good place to start. Back up and think of, like, what would it be like to meet someone from your company or get a sales call or see a brochure or visit your website for the very first time, not knowing anything about your company or what you offer. What is going to be, what's compelling to you as a consumer? Like, right. Where do you start?
Yeah. There's this idea of the North Star. And the North Star for any company is really what their guiding light is to success or to profitability, to marketing genius, to a viral video, whatever the case may be. There's always this North Star, something that people are tracking towards. And in most companies, that North Star is revenue. But in marketing, that North Star should really be your brand, how your brand is perceived, and are you backing up what you're telling people you can do and what your brand represents. Imagine if, for a second, Eric, if Yeti had this incredible brand, but their coolers didn't keep things cold, right? That's a fail. So they not only have to back up with their product, but they also have to stay on brand at all times. The North Star concept is that any type of marketing, any type of branding, any messaging, anything video that you're doing is focused on this one North Star. And that then leads it back to the second layer, which is an anchor statement. That anchor statement is something that is sometimes missed in marketing. It's here's what we do, here's how we do it, and here's how your life looks afterwards. That's the anchor statement. How important is it for companies, in your opinion, to have a North Star of marketing and have an anchor statement to start with so they are always on brand?
Sure. The anchor statement, especially, Adam, I think is that's such an important place to start. Who the hero is in the story, which is your ideal client, what their pain is, what problem that they have that your brand can solve, and you essentially become the guide for them. You're steering that client through their journey and through the decision-making process to ultimately achieve success. Whether it's how do I get a cooler that that is bear proof and will hold ice for 8 days.
Right. But that matters to people, right? That does matter. People hear those things. And without a strong anchor statement, a marketer or a brand consultant, or even the consumer doesn't have a firm grasp and understanding of what companies are, who they are, what they do sometimes, because the marketing is all over the place, their stories all over the place, the brands all over the place, is probably one of the most important things for any new company, a startup, a new company, or a company trying to reinvent themselves, that everything is connected. Their story, an anchor statement, their brand, their feelings, their emotional connection to the consumer. That's a lot for a small business or even a medium-sized business to go through. And at some point, you just roll up your hands and you go, forget it. Here's our logo. Here's our slogan. Give me a website and let me get to work. How do you bridge that gap between confusion and frustration of a normal company and a normal marketer? And hey, this is important for your company to succeed because people need to hear your story and they need to feel an emotional connection to your product.
Yeah, I think it does kind of go back to empathy and really understanding who that client is and what they're really looking for, so that really understanding that pain that needs to be solved. And then again, with the anchor statement, you end up with something that is the core foundation of every piece of creative that you put out there. And beyond creative, even how you answer a phone call, or how you follow up with a customer after the job is done. All those things are a huge part of it.
And when people ask you, what do you do? Right? You don't want to say, well, I do this. I'm this. You want to give them a story. You want to give them a couple sentences. You want to get them intrigued. You want them to ask maybe a follow-up question. You want something to happen outside of, I fix elevators, right?
Right.
You want something that can grab them so they can ask a follow-up, and then you start to get, now they're in, right? They're connected to you somehow because you told them a quick little story about what it is that you
Right.
do. And that's what that anchor statement does. It intrigues, it entices, and it brings a sense of inquisitive nature to the question, what do you do?
Right. I like your analogy to the elevator. I build elevators.
Mm-hmm.
I'm an elevator operator. It's like, okay, that's at the core of what you do. But if you want to put a spin on it, and when you want to put a story around it, it's like, well, we bring people to the next level.
Well, what does that mean? What do you mean you bring people to the next level?
Right.
Oh, well, I work for Bop Bop, and we maintain and build elevators for multi-use high-rise facility in Manhattan. All of a sudden, cooler, right? All of a sudden, that guy's got stories. That person's got something. So that's the true genius behind an anchor statement that works, is that ability to tell a story, to showcase how your company or product solves a problem and how someone's life is better afterwards because of what you do. Now someone at a party who says, what do you do? Now you're talking to them for 10 minutes about what you do. And maybe, just maybe, they need your service. So Eric, there's so many brand stories that we could talk about. And Apple is one of my favorite brands and one of the most iconic brands when it comes to storytelling. And Steve Jobs was a master at that, not just from a sales perspective, but how he got people to feel about his products. You felt better, more important, more valued. He went towards the designers and the creatives and those types of inspirational people quickly with the Mac in the late 90s. And that really changed the trajectory of the company. And then into the iPhone and into the iPad and all the other products, it was because of how people felt with Apple. How awesome is that as a brand designer to see a company like that do those things and to be as successful as they've been for something as simple as making somebody feel good about their product?
Yeah, I mean, it definitely touches on the irrational for sure. But what's interesting about Apple is just seeing how, as a computer company, they only had such as a fraction of the market share when you compare them to Microsoft. But then, the minute that they came out with the iPhone, it was like a whole new world opened up for them. Or actually, the iPod first.
Right.
So,
yeah,
that was just mind blowing to be able to have your music at push of a button and to suddenly blow up from being this computer company that had always, everybody always knew. But I feel like it was that at that point you saw so much more impact of how their brand has influenced the world and other brands especially.
And the thing about that, Eric, is that there was already MP3 players. There was already technology out there that had songs in your pocket. That was already there. But nobody made you feel cooler about having songs in your pocket than Apple. And when the iPod came out, they matched that with the iStore and the music store, and it became relatively easier at a push of a button to get the songs, play the songs all on one device. No download, no tethered wires, nothing like that. He made it easy, made it accessible, and he made it cool. And no matter what you feel about Apple as a brand, or whatever you feel about Steve Jobs as a CEO, as a brand, Apple is the case study for how to make people feel about a product. And while small and mid-sized companies are never going to hit the threshold of an Apple, they can learn some valuable lessons from companies like that, because they didn't just talk about their products, they talked about how their products made people feel. And that's a very important lesson in brand design. And in your first steps in marketing or any rebrand is think of your other person. Stop thinking just about your product and your widget. Stop thinking about your how you get it from here to there. Stop thinking about the price. Start thinking about how you make people feel.
Right.
That should be your North Star.
I mean, I feel like there's such an amazing example because they get the nuance of it. It's like if you've ever owned an Apple product, before you ever put it in your hands, you have to get through the wrapping. It's beautifully the clearest shrink wrap you've ever seen in your life. With the edges are like creatively put so that they're not bad to like touch or feel. And then you open the box and here's the device. It's sitting in there perfectly. Like every single interaction that you have with their product, whether it's in their store, whether it's taking it out of the box, whether it's one of their commercials, everything drives back home to who they are and how they make people feel.
Yep. And they've been doing it for years and they'll continue to do it. Eric Anderson, I'm Adam Grubb with Haven Media. This is Haven Media Cut. We appreciate you guys watching. Have a great day. And thank you so much.